Hey everybody, it's the Neutral Zone Hotel and you've just checked in. We're an unapologetically left-leaning podcast that explores hockey at its best and worst. I'm Benjamin, my pronouns are he, him. I'm a Montreal Canadiens fan living in Ottawa, and I am so pleased to welcome you to the Neutral Zone Hotel. We are going to spend at least 30 minutes talking about Lego sets that SJ cannot find place for in their home. And if you're lucky, we might get to hockey. You know what? I already cut ahead. So SJ, why don't you go ahead? Introduce yourself.
Hello, I am SJ. My pronouns are they, them, and I am a Seattle Kraken fan living in the beautiful city of Seattle, and I like Legos.
Hi, my name's Trevor. My pronouns are he, him. I am the hometown Vancouver Canucks fan, and I have been coping with Vancouver being out by also looking at Lego sets that I will be getting and want two of, because, they're making a Legend of Zelda Lego set, and it's gorgeous.
I do think that they made a strong choice starting with an Ocarina of Time set. I think that really hits the demographic right in the pocketbook. But I can't, there's no, where am I supposed to put it? Where? I'm out of display spaces. I was really tempted by that Mordor, the Tower of Barad-dûr set too. Have you seen the pictures? It's enormous. That thing is like
SJ.
3 feet tall.
So it's almost as tall as you are.
SJ.
Hi, I'm Alex. I'm a Pittsburgh Penguins fan, and my pronouns are she, her.
Sorry, Alex.
Welcome, Alex. How do you feel about Lego?
I think they're fun, but I have not participated in quite a while because I've got so much other shit.
Valid.
I built an X-Wing during the pandemic when I had a bad day. That was pretty fun.
Hell yeah.
And we may very well be taking submissions. So if you're an amateur designer of Lego sets and you want to put together one that represents the Neutral Zone Hotel, please send it on in. We'd love a chance to see it.
They are doing
But
those
for now,
like art poster style ones that you hang on the wall. Maybe we should just get one of those in our fancy dancy logo.
there you go. Well, we're going to leave the Lego chat behind, unfortunately. Sorry, brickheads.
You think that's what you think?
Well, what we're going to do now is we're going to connect ourselves to the PWHL playoffs. And we want to talk about two specific things. So we thought it was all over. Game 4, overtime winner. Minnesota is going absolutely wild. Their gear is everywhere. The fans, 13,000 plus in attendance. The second most attended game in American professional women's hockey history. And then the goal gets called back.
Yeah. SJ and I were actually in a voice call in our Discord server. neutralzonehotel.com/Discord. Come join us. And we're kind of going wild, and we're like, wait, what's going on? Why are they reviewing it? Oh God, is this coming back? And then we saw the replays, and yeah.
I'm okay. So like as soon as you saw a replay of that goal, I think it really hinged on two things. Okay, so here's what actually happened. Taylor Heisey went Taylor Heisey mode, and she cut hard to the net. Shot, it bounced off Frankel, and then Jakes came in and buried the rebound. Jakes buried the rebound fairly easily because Heisey had fallen as she was shooting, and she fully slid in to the crease and basically pushed Frankel like way over, and like there was so much contact they were practically hugging. So the goalie interference call really came down to whether Heisey fell and slid in to the crease on her own, or whether the Boston defender Sydney Morin had tripped her. If they had determined that Morin had tripped her, then it wouldn't have been goalie interference because the contact would have been initiated as a result of a defending player, but she was pretty clearly falling before Morin chopped at her legs. She was definitely going in on her own, and I feel really bad for Minnesota, but like the goal should definitely not have been called a goal in the ice. Like the official should have not have called it a goal in the ice. And the fact that it got reviewed and overturned is like the least shocking thing ever. But it was absolutely brutal for the team because they basically had a huge adrenaline spike. They thought that they had won the cup. This was an overtime goal in a 0-0 game. Them scoring would have been it. Like they would literally win. And they had all of that adrenaline. They threw their gear all over. They hugged. They were crying. The crowd was going nuts. And then they had to keep playing hockey. And you could tell they were really, really shaky after that. And Lena Mueller scored. First of all, Minnesota immediately gave up an odd player rush that they didn't score on, but they gained the zone, they cycled it, and then Mueller scored. So it was clear that they had just kind of fell apart defensively. If they had been able to make it one more minute, they would have gotten an intermission, and I think they would have reset, and who knows what would have happened. But they couldn't hold on long enough. And Mueller scored, and it's going to Game 5. I would like to note, just for our listeners, like, you already know what happened. You know how Game 5 went. We were recording this before Game 5. It's just the vagaries of our recording schedule. I apologize for that, but
it is what it is. Yeah, you summarized it pretty nicely. There's not much more to add, but kudos to the refs for doing the hard duty and basically saying, hey, we know this is our inaugural championship and we almost had our inaugural champion, but we got to do the hard thing and call this right. No goal.
I was very curious whether or not there was a head office that makes these calls, or if it was actually on the refs.
So yes, there is a central review board. I don't know the details of it, but it was announced partway through the season that all reviews were going to be done by head office rather than on the ice. So up until partway through the season, it was the refs doing the review using the available footage, but they've since arranged for there to be somebody doing it, or at least in conjunction with the referees. My opinion or my feelings on this is, I kind of think hockey was better when Brett Hull could win Stanley Cups with his foot in the crease. Not that I defend that rule, but the capacity of an overtime hockey game to excite and thrill is going to be neutered by players starting to stand around after they've scored the game-winning goal, watching the referees to see if they point to the ice after going to the box to review. Like, what do we do now? Do we change the way goal calling is? Is there now, wave it off, no goal, point to the net, goal, big shrug? I don't know. We're going to review it.
I mean,
it's brutal.
The ref called. I really think the ref did call the goal wrong. Like, it was so clearly an interference issue. But here's the thing, like, I don't want that goal to count. Like, no. Because then, like, basically we're just totally neutering goalies. And I don't know, maybe that's what we should do because the goalies in the PWHL are too good. But I mean, if you can just, like, run over the goalies in order to score your game winner, then, like, what are we doing?
The problem for me is that in this situation, because of the way Minnesota reacted, the understandable reaction, the referees had a binary choice: give the game to Minnesota or give the game to Boston, and they chose the latter.
Well, they didn't, and I don't think they didn't
I do not believe Minnesota had a fair chance to play after the emotional event they went through.
Well, what are they supposed
There's
to do?
no
Just like go to intermission immediately? Like,
yes.
That's not in the rules.
Call a timeout. Do something.
And
Yeah, that one surprised me.
Now, Minnesota could have called a timeout. That would have been on Ken Klee to do. As far as I know, they had their timeout, and it would have probably been very smart of him to do that, but he did not.
I think that what I'm saying is I think that the leagues, plural, need to review the process for what happens when you wave off a championship goal in overtime, because what occurred to me was not fair to Minnesota. And it's not necessarily fair of Minnesota or the league to force Ken Klee to use his timeout, because they've made, as you said, the wrong call on the ice. I don't want to see us waving off good goals aggressively. I don't want to see teams winning a Stanley Cup or a Walter Cup or a gold medal in the Olympics and then standing around wondering if they should celebrate. And I feel like that's the course we're on after we've seen gold medal winning goals waved off. We've seen a Walter Cup winning goal waved off. It's going to happen in the Stanley Cup sooner rather than later.
I'm just not sure what you think the correct process should be. Like, what is the ideal here?
Video review should only be used to determine whether the puck crossed the line, and the call on the ice should stand otherwise.
I'm in the
Sean McIndoe camp.
It doesn't matter if you run the goalie then.
Yes, it does. The ref can still wave it off. But human error by referee.
Not if the ref doesn't bother to do it.
But human errors by referees should be part of the game.
I do believe that to an extent, certainly. Like,
the other option...
I am absolutely sick of these millimeter offside calls, goals getting. But I don't know.
I'm in favor of all sorts of things. Put a third ref in the press box with a button to hammer if they think something's gone wrong and a big red light shines so everyone knows right away there's a potential issue. Bring in better technology to determine whether or not something has happened vis-a-vis offsides. Whatever you need to do. But putting teams in the position where they are not sure if they have won a championship is not only like bad for them, but it's bad for the product. It looks like crap on TV.
I think if anything too, I know you usually can't get them in overtime, but even just taking like a 3-minute media timeout would probably have been great from the league's perspective. Just to, I think, backpack off your point, Benjamin, just give the players a little bit of time to cool down, reset, get refocused instead of getting thrown immediately into it, just being like, oh, shit, we actually have to play hockey now. Uh-oh.
Yeah, and again, I'm saying that's specifically for championship winning goals. If a championship winning goal is waved off, there should be additional leeway available to the officiating team to give an extra timeout or to let the team sort themselves out before returning to hockey. Because on the other side, they've been staring at the damn thing for 5 minutes, knowing what's about to happen. I don't really want us to be in a situation where we just accept that in hockey sometimes overtime goals are going to get overturned, because we are going to lead into a situation where teams don't react when they score. They're going to be extremely hesitant. And I wouldn't be surprised if tomorrow/yesterday, depending on if you're me or if you're listening to this, I wouldn't be surprised if there is an overtime goal that nobody reacts, or that the reaction is extremely muted, and what we get are people standing around nervously watching the referees. And I think that's something, it's an unintended consequence of the review era, but we can fix it. So, any other thoughts on this? Nope. SJ, who are your favorites for the Alana Kloss playoff MVP?
Well, on Boston, I think there's absolutely only one choice, and that's Erin Frankel.
Yep.
She is the reason that Boston is where they are. She's been their best player, absolutely by far. Gotta give it to the goalie there. On Minnesota, I would probably give it to Taylor Heisey.
Yeah,
Trevor?
I'm in agreement on both of those. Heisey currently leads the playoff scoring with both 5 goals and 7 points right now. She's been fantastic in these finals. You can maybe give a shout out as well to Michaela Kava, who's second in scoring right now with 6 points, and all of her points have been in the finals so far. But if this is an award that's going to encapsulate all of the playoffs, then I think Heisey's the front runner.
Yeah, I think it's Frankel and Heisey for me as well, unless Michaela Kava scores a hat trick tomorrow. But I also want to shout out Susanna Tapani because she's had a great playoff as well.
Mm-hmm.
Yep.
So
that trade, we talked about it obviously when it first happened due to the history of it, but holy smokes, has that trade paid off so well for both teams already.
All right.
Yep.
Let's move on. And let's talk about the coaching carousel. So we've had some significant changes in the last week. So we'll start with the place you're supposed to start, which is the head coach of the Toronto Maple Leafs. I'm sorry, former head coach of the Toronto Maple Leafs, Sheldon Keefe to New Jersey. Alex, what do you think about Sheldon Keefe in New Jersey?
I think it's a good hire. I think as a online hockey community, we started to, I don't want to say be too hard on Sheldon Keefe because he did not do a good job in the playoffs. But I think we got it really disconnected from what Keefe's record actually is, which is a guy who has never had a losing season as a NHL head coach. And a guy like that goes on the market, and people were surprised that he was instantly contacted. And I think the Devils are a good fit. They're a young team with a exciting cadre of stars. And if there's one thing that Sheldon Keefe has shown he knows how to do, it's get to the playoffs with a team with a lot of exciting young stars and questionable at best goaltending. And that's something that New Jersey really needed this year, and they didn't have. Now, the goaltending should be better. It would be hard to be worse than it was for the first 2/3 of the season for the New Jersey Devils. But I think that this is a hire that makes sense for both sides. And I think Keefe is sincerely excited to not be the Toronto Maple Leafs head coach in a way in a way that's kind of been very publicly obvious. And so I hope it works out well for him. I think a lot of the stuff that he did not do as good a job at with Toronto was not as much in his control as it would be in a place like New Jersey or any other team in the league, just because of how magnified everything is there.
To that point, SJ, you actually mentioned in Discord as well, Keefe's 43. The dude looks like he's in his mid-50s at this point, just with the stress levels that came being the coach in Toronto. And for as fine as Morgan Riley is, it'll be nice to see Sheldon Keefe coach a team that has a good defenseman, assuming Dougie Hamilton can stay healthy.
Yeah, more than one good defender. I think they have a really exciting young couple of young defenders in Simone Nemec and Luke Hughes. And it'll be really interesting to see how they develop. And they have a true number one in Dougie Hamilton. Consider whether he can stay healthy. I think it's the big. I don't know why you guys are laughing.
I'm laughing about something completely unrelated. Please just keep going.
I'm ashamed I forgot Luke Hughes. How dare I?
I mean, I think he had kind of an up and down rookie season. But yeah, I think they have the makings of a really solid defense core back there, and then they've got some really great people in the forward group as well. So there's no doubt that the Devils underperformed this past season. The goaltending really let them down, and then they did deal with a ton of injuries. So Sheldon Keefe, you might as well just pencil him in as a Jack Adams finalist, considering the massive bounce back that is going to occur this year. And I can't, he looked so happy to be out of Toronto. He ran home to record that farewell video.
Sheldon Keefe he's 4 years older than me, and he has like all the gray hair, and I have just a little bit at the temples.
Yeah.
So,
he was not gray haired when he started that job.
He had a little bit at the temples.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think, New Jersey contacted him the same day he recorded that infamous Keefe on the beach video, in which he looked so peaceful. He just looked like, I don't know, if you wanted to show someone who's blissful, that's the video you'd show them, just how happy he was to finally be free of having to put up with Mitch Marner and Mitch Marner's dad and have Elliot Friedman call him a cuck on national television, which is still, cannot believe they didn't fire him after that.
I mean, it was very funny that even actually occurred.
It is truly one of the craziest things in hockey history. But I agree with the statements here. He's going to do very good in New Jersey. He's the kind of guy they need in New Jersey, I think. And I bet you he's going to get some really good responses out of that really young core. That's just one of the most promising group of youth in the NHL.
Did you guys hear that stuff that was coming out about how happy Fitzgerald was to hire a coach who wouldn't ignore their analytics staff?
Tim, stop paying attention, please. You can ignore this little bit about.
Would you say that's rough?
Heyo. All right, let's talk about another coach. How about Scott Arniel in Winnipeg? Trevor, you go first.
His stuff was there. What he played for the Winnipeg Jets way back in the day. He coached the Manitoba Moose. He was the interim coach for a spell. His stuff was there. What are you gonna do? I don't know. I don't really have thoughts on Arniel.
I think it's more along the lines of they brought him in to work with Bonus, understanding that he was going to be the guy when Bonus finally retired or finished his contract, and that's exactly what happened.
Yeah, I mean, he is not a particularly exciting hire, in part because he's not a name that people are super familiar with, unless you're a super duper sicko for the Columbus Blue Jackets, at least in terms of head coaching. So yeah, they hired the guy who was the interim coach while their head coach was out with illness or personal leave multiple times throughout the season. And he did a good job during those stretches. And at a certain point, especially when you had the season that Winnipeg had, you don't need to do anything more. And there's something that's been bothering me that I have to go deeper into before we really get into it on the podcast. But I want to say it here. Arniel is pretty much every guy that we have discussed or will discuss in this segment of the podcast, a retread. He is someone who has been a NHL head coach before at some time in the past. But on the other hand, can you really call being the head coach for the early 2010s Columbus Blue Jackets that never made the playoffs being a NHL head coach? a sincere question that
I mean, have you looked at that roster? You have Rick Nash, obviously, and then your next best scorer was I said scorer. Your next best scorer is RJ Umberger, Antoine Vermette, Derek Brassard. You have a baby Jakub Voracek, which is nice. Oh, this is so all-time best name Grant Clitsome character, though.
Oh, yeah.
So he's a guy who, he has a record as a previous head coach, but he's certainly one of the fellows whose record as a previous head coach probably shouldn't be held against them.
I'm just looking forward to Eric's kids coming home and saying, "Mommy, why is the name Clitsome so funny?"
Oh, we're gonna get in trouble with our most valued listener.
Whoa. You don't say that in public. Edit that out.
Look, we gotta pick one. I picked Erik.
I know I'm on board with you, Alex. I don't think it counts, and given how good Arniel was with the Moose, he won the AHL's version of the Jack Adams. He's willing to live in Winnipeg, that's like 67% of the job. Why not see what he can do? The Jets did well this year. It sounds like he had a pretty big say in the coaching decisions being made this year. Maybe it's a guy who can recover. I'm perfectly cool with Scott Arniel on the Jets. All right, so let's talk about the one that SJ has been waiting to talk about. Marco Sturm, rumored to be hired as the coach of the San Jose Sharks.
Well,
SJ, do you want to take that one away?
Oh, that one's not confirmed yet. We don't know that's happening.
No, I'm just teasing.
There's a lot of interesting things to say about that one, if it happens.
There is. I just want to wait until it actually happens.
I want to talk again about Mike Greer. I'm a big fan of what he's been doing, and Sturm would be another big fan thing. No, SJ, why don't you walk us through the announced promotion of Dan Bylsma, something like that? Bylsma?
Yep.
Apologies, Mr. Bylsma, for mispronouncing your name. The promotion of Dan Bylsma from the head coach job of the Coachella Valley Firebirds, currently in the Western Conference Finals, the AHL playoffs, the Calder Cup playoffs, to the head coach of the Seattle Kraken, becoming the second head coach in Kraken history.
So this one was largely expected, I think. The feeling among the Kraken fan base was that if Dan Bylsma wanted the job, then they would probably give it to him. And the only question was whether he wanted the job. Bylsma has spent the past 2 seasons as head coach of the Coachella Valley Firebirds, the Kraken's AHL affiliate. He's their first head coach, and he really built that program from scratch, and that program has been extremely successful. They went to the Calder Cup final in their very first year, losing in a Game 7 overtime against the Hershey Bears, who were just a behemoth in the AHL. And so that was great. They're filling that brand new building in Palm Desert. It's a 10,000 seat arena.
20,000 feet.
Yeah, 20,000 feet. Yeah.
There it is.
Arena. So yeah, they've built a fan base. They've built a really great fan base, and they have done it by pursuing 2 perhaps conflicting goals. The 2 conflicting goals that most minor league development league teams have to balance, which is developing young players for the big club versus building a winning program. And not every team manages that. I think in many ways, the Coachella Valley Firebirds are a great example of how to do it. And although a lot of the credit, I think, comes to down to the fact that they've been so very willing to spend money hand over fist. They've absolutely opened the taps, the money taps in Coachella Valley. They're doing stuff like paying players on one-way NHL contracts to play exclusively in the AHL. There are guys on two-way contracts whose AHL salary is like $400,000. They're paying a lot of kind of minor league vets, and they brought some players back from Europe to essentially play as a kind of a veteran core while they build their pipeline and get that program off the ground in a really winning way. But at the same time, they're also doing things like signing CHL free agents like Ty Cartier and graduating him to the NHL, right? So they're meeting both goals. You know, they're building up these pipeline players like Ryan Winterton, and Logan Morrison was another CHL free agent signing, and they've graduated Riker Evans to the NHL, who was a second-round pick. They're going to graduate Shane Wright this year, who is an obvious first-round pick, but he needed that development time playing a big role in the AHL, and I think he needed to do that on a winning club. So I think he's done a really incredible job. Bylsma has in the A. They also he has a great staff in Stu Bickle and Jess Campbell, who is the notable in that Jess Campbell is the first woman assistant coach in the AHL. And but like I know that he is also a retread coach. He's been an NHL coach before, and I know that hasn't always gone well for him. So Alex, can you tell us a little bit about Bylsma's NHL coaching history?
So, yes, I can. You mentioned that was your perspective as a Kraken fan.
Yep.
And it's been very incredible, more than most head coaching hires, where there's a difference between what the fan base of a team has seen and the rest of the league at large, or at least the fan base at large, because the rest of the league's memories of Dan Bylsma is him absolutely flaming out in Buffalo. It did not end well. He and Jack Eichel were feuding, and that was a feud that he lost, only for Eichel to also begin feuding with the Sabres at large a bit later. Prior to that, he, of course, won a Stanley Cup with the Pittsburgh Penguins in 2009. And he's a guy who, the way that it ended in Buffalo was so bad that it's taken this long for him to come back to be a NHL head coach, despite the fact that he does have that Stanley Cup that he can point to.
How long has it been?
He last coached in 2016-2017 as a head coach. He was an assistant for 3 years with the Detroit Red Wings.
You know, he has actually talked a bit about his time in Buffalo and how that ended for him. And one of the notable things I think he said was that it actually destroyed his joy in coaching. Like it was apparently quite a changing experience for him. And he has talked a lot about what he took away from that experience and the changes he has made in how he coaches as a result of that. He said one of the biggest mistake that he made in Buffalo is that he didn't get to know his players as people. Like he didn't connect with them like modern players expect. He did not communicate well, and that really destroyed any chances he had to really be effective for that team. And he's talked very honestly about how he's grown and changed his approach as a result. Because like everything that I've heard about how all the problems he had with Eichel and how he didn't communicate with players in Buffalo, like you hear none of that about his experiences in Coachella Valley. He seems to have really learned from that experience. So that's one of the reasons I'm very hopeful about this hire. And I don't necessarily like think that what happened in Buffalo is going to happen again in Seattle.
Yeah, no, it's the sort of thing where if you had an AHL coach take your brand new team to the Calder Cup final and then be on the precipice of doing it again, it sure seems like that he should be your first choice for head coach, because he's going to know your program already better than anyone else or any outsider that you could bring in, and he's got that record of success. A lot of NHL fans, because they are NHL fans, don't really pay attention to the AHL beyond their own affiliate team, which is fine. Honestly, which is probably healthy. So
they can't all be sickos like us.
So they don't know that Dan Bylsma has done a phenomenal job and has positioned himself well for this job. While most Kraken fan do know that. So yeah, it's one of those things where it's a name. When you hear it, you go, wait, really him? But it makes all of the sense in the world when you look at what he's done the past 2 years.
Yeah.
If he wanted to learn how to communicate better with his players, it just sounds like he just needs to sit them down and scroll through the photos in their phones. But in all
really
seriousness,
learn what's important to them.
In all seriousness, I'm willing to give Bylsma a pass for his time in Buffalo, because look at the history since then. It's not just been him that's had a problem with Buffalo. It's been insert list of head coaches Buffalo's had since Lindy Ruff got fired last time. It's a mess. I'm willing to give them that excuse, and especially because he's paid his dues. He's, as we've discussed many times, he's turned Coachella Valley into a powerhouse in the last couple of years. So yeah, I'm excited to see what he does with it. Plus, I think him having prior relationships with players like Cartier and especially Shane Wright is going to be very helpful for their development in the big league.
Yep.
Well, there you have it, folks. You've heard from the ghosts of coaching past, present, and future. And we're going to take a quick break. But first, we'd really appreciate your help if you could check us out on YouTube at Neutral Zone Hotel. Listen to a pod there, smash the like button, subscribe, leave some comments. I'm told SJ reads all the comments. I don't know how SJ finds the time, but they sure do. We're on Instagram and Bluesky at Neutral Zone Hotel, all one word. Like Trevor alluded to gently earlier, you can join our Discord, neutralzonehotel.com/Discord to hang out. And yeah, 5 stars. Give us 5 stars on your podcast platform of choice, which I'm using Pocket Casts now, and I can't give things 5 stars, but I think I can give them thumbs up. So do that if that's the option. We'll be right back. Hey folks, we're back. All right, let's talk about Don Waddell. Mr. Waddell, formerly the president, general manager of the Atlanta Thrashers until there wasn't an Atlanta Thrashers. Then he was hired to do all the same jobs in Carolina and built a team that's been a regular season powerhouse and a playoff disappointment. He's gone to Columbus, and I think it's fair to say they would take regular season powerhouse and playoff disappointment in Ohio's capital city. Trevor, what do you think about Don Waddell?
It's going to be nice for Columbus to finally get someone who knows probably what they're doing after 10 years of Yarmo. And also with that news, he gets president of Hockey Ops as well as John Davidson moves upstairs to be senior advisor and alternate governor. So this is basically now Don Waddell's baby to do with what he wants and change this how he sees fit, which I can only see as being a good thing after the turmoil of the last couple of years between coaching mismanagement and just mismanagement in general, and all sort of mismanagement of players, and just all sorts of drama that's been unnecessarily for a team that has been as mid as the Columbus Blue Jackets. It'll be nice to see them finally turn it around. Knock on wood.
Mid is too nice. That the Blue Jackets are a disaster of a franchise, along with Arizona on the ice, one of the lowest achieving teams of the cap era.
Yeah, it's so. Oh, let's see. Organizing thoughts. I kind of feel like saying Robinson got kicked upstairs isn't quite accurate, because the dude, it feels like a retirement. This is a position you're giving your retired guy, as opposed to we're promoting this guy to get him out of the way because we don't want to fire him. He's the guy who ran this search to find the person who was replacing him.
John Davidson is 71 years old. He was an NHL goaltender in the 1970s. So I think you're absolutely right. This is a thank you for your service move.
I mean, he also notably has been dealing with a lot of health problems that have kept him away from his job as president of hockey ops for quite some time. And I think the fact that he was essentially an absent president really contributed to the mismanagement and screwed upness of that franchise over the last.
So yeah, he comes in, he guides the team through the couple months between, or the months between Jarmo firing and this hiring, and now he gets to take a step back and basically, if Don Waddell wants to call someone to ask for advice, say, hey, what do you think about this coach? Or, hey, is there something that I can do to like appeal to this player because we really want to keep him? And he's there to call.
I would love to know what John Davidson would tell Don Waddell if Waddell asked him, what do you think about Pascal Vincent as coach?
I mean,
my guess, Pascal Vincent is not lasting very long. If he does coach in this upcoming season, it will be on the world's shortest rope.
And so yeah, they hired Don Waddell, who did a good job being the overseer in chief of the Carolina Hurricanes. I'm kind of curious to see whether he tries to recreate a setup like they had in the Hurricanes, where where the hockey operations department was much more decentralized. He was the figurehead, but a lot of that was because he was the hockey guy. He was one of the 200 hockey men. And therefore he had the phone number of all the other hockey men, and he knew how to speak hockey men. Versus a more traditional setup role where the authority is mostly in one person who's the final say on all of the decisions.
I mean, they were definitely deal with a really different. Okay, so Tom Dundon, who owns the Carolina Hurricanes, is cheap as hell, and the reason that Waddell was both president and GM in Carolina and doing two different jobs. He was running a lot of business ops. He was not just hockey ops. He was doing multiple jobs there for not great pay. And it's because Dundon didn't want to pay for those roles.
This is a guy, though, who he broke in with the Atlanta Thrashers, which were famously cheap as all shit.
Yeah, so I think
he's made a career.
I think Waddell is going to have a little bit more money to play with in his hockey ops budget, and I'm very curious to know whether he ends up hiring a GM at some point to take over some more of that day-to-day ops.
Yep.
I wouldn't be surprised. I wouldn't be surprised if like after a season, like he gives the GM job to like Rick Nash or whatever. Puts in a few more assistants. Maybe I wouldn't be surprised if he like kind of modernizes that front office, hires more analytics people, that kind of thing.
Oh, it's the other part of this news. Since Don Waddell left, Erik Tulsky is the interim GM in Carolina. We'll see how that goes. It would be, I think, really cool as a denizen of the hockey internet to see Tulsky get the full-time GM job there, just because he is also a creature born of the hockey internet.
The vibes around Tulsky remind me a lot of the vibes around Kyle Dubas when he was first hired. So I truly hope for everyone, and it's kind of the same thing too. Dubas came in as an AGM under a tenured hockey name, someone with a bit of a pedigree, and was the analytics guy who got promoted to the big club. And I haven't heard how that's worked out in Toronto or Pittsburgh, but I'm sure we'll find out one of these days.
I think that Dubas's reputation as the analytics guy was always overblown.
Yes, 100%. And I don't think that Tulsky's is.
Yeah, no, Tulsky really is the analytics guy. I think the main barrier for Tulsky in Carolina is the fact that they're very unlikely to give him president of hockey ops, which means that they will, if they want to keep him as a GM there, and I absolutely think they should, and if they don't, he will leave, and I think that would be an incredible own goal on the part of the Carolina Hurricanes. They need to hire somebody who can hold the president's job and do somebody who is a little more tenured and as a GM, as a hockey ops executive, and split duties.
Yeah, that's kind of my thing. There was some discussion. I know, SJ, you posed the question in our Discord, as well as I saw it a couple of other places, of why the interim gig. And I really think that's much more about the way that Carolina's front office was structured, with a lot of the business sides, business duties being parceled in with the GM's duties, where that would normally be part of the bailiwick of a team CEO or a vice president or like a team vice president. Mm-hmm. And like they might completely trust Tulsky with the hockey operation side of things and managing their their scouting and their analytics and their coaching personnel, but they don't really have a sense for how he would handle the business aspect. So I kind of feel like that interim is as much to figure out what they want to do about the GM's position itself as it was to figure out if they wanted to hire Tulsky for the job full time.
Yeah, I guess we'll see how that breaks down. Okay, let's go overseas and talk about the 2024 IIHF Men's World Hockey Championships. And when we were in Utica for the women's, they kept calling it the IIHF, and that just really pisses me off. It's the IIHF. Come on. So big congratulations.
That's the hill you're going to die on.
Of all the hills, that's the hill.
Yeah.
Big congratulations to Team Czechia taking gold. Pasternak with the gold medal winning goal after joining once the Bruins were eliminated. Lucas Dostal blanks Switzerland. Switzerland had a hell of a tournament. Kevin Fiala was named the MVP. Roman Josi and Nico Hischier also key contributors. And Sweden took out Canada in the bronze medal game as Jordan Binnington became Jordan Binnington. So that's
so
that's
he
fun.
faked punching somebody out.
Did he?
Oh, did he?
No, probably not. But it's you said Jordan Binnington was doing Jordan Binnington, so
when I wrote down Binnington just like the game winning goal in that bronze medal game was a goal scored by Carl Grunstrom, where Binnington got out of his crease to clear the puck, and he cleared it directly to Carl Grundstrom. That was the game winner.
Yeah, it was an all-timer Binnington moment.
Yeah.
He's between that and the collapse against Austria, Binnington can't touch the Four Nations and Olympics team. I think he played himself off of those teams in big games in this tournament.
Yeah. During the broadcast, they would like pan up and they would show like the press boxes where the management teams for the Four Nations tournament and the Olympics and stuff were sitting and like taking notes. And I'm like, you see the Canada one during that game. And I'm like, well, the only thing they're writing on their little pads right now is Jordan Binnington's name with big strike throughs.
I'm going to do this again, where I'm talking about some conversations I had with other, in this case, less hockey knowledgeable people rather than just people who don't know about Seattle's AHL team, where they're like, really? This is who they have in goal for Canada? And it's kind of like, yes, but also it's the Team Canada for the IIHF Worlds, like men's Worlds, a tournament that...
And notably, we don't care too much about in Canada.
Or, to be frank, in the USA.
We care more here than you care there.
That's not saying much.
Celebrating that big 5th place finish for Team USA.
I mean, it is. I mean, America has not done well in this tournament for a long time. And there's historic reasons for that, right? Because this was the top tournament for European players for years and years and years and years before they came over to the NHL. And we've talked about European players come to the NHL before. And it still has that status. Like, you go watch some of that game, that gold medal game. The Czechs were going wild. Lots of Swiss people there. 15,000
people. 15,000 people at those games.
Well, and some of the photos and videos of the aftermath, like they flooded the square out there. There was a video on the Czech subway, jam-packed to the gills, and they're all jumping up and down. Probably nearly broke the train down.
Well, it can't be that bad. It's not in Ottawa. But Austria had a decent tournament. They took a point off Canada. They had a big win over Finland. Their fans were going crazy. They were singing all night. So it means something to these national programs that aren't Canada and the United States.
Yep.
When we did international hockey in the 80s, we did the Canada Cup. And we did it extremely well in Canada. I just want to point that part out. And we're not getting a World Cup because of Russia's invasion of the Ukraine. We're getting Four Nations instead. But I expect that Team Canada and Team USA will send their best to that.
Yeah. Did you see the David Pasternak's Instagram post after he won?
Yeah, with the beer.
Like he's in the locker room after. He's holding the trophy, and his caption is "Invite to Four Nations tournament now, please." Like, and I don't blame him.
That rules.
Like,
the only reason that they're not inviting Czechia and Switzerland and Slovakia to that tournament is they don't have enough NHL players, and the NHL wants this to be an NHL tournament.
Yeah, I hate that.
It's the sort of thing where, like, if they were to do a true World Cup again, like they did a few years back, and I say true World Cup, I mean the NHL trying to do a best on best tournament because they have, for whatever reason, problems making it to the Olympics. But I think if they were to do it in that format this year, they wouldn't need things like Team Europe or Team North America because, well, they might still need a Team North America just because of player count. But we've seen Switzerland and Germany take strides as programs, as like national programs. We've seen both Czechia and Slovakia start to rebound from their lows as this new generation of young players comes in. You've got some real like high-end young players for for Slovakia, and that's something they were missing for a long time, where it's like players who were capable of being drafted at the top of the NHL draft. And so you're really seeing, I don't want to say it's kind of leveling out, but you're seeing a bunch of the second tier programs continue taking steps forward and becoming more competitive, and seeing Czechia win, seeing Swiss have a phenomenal tournament. It makes me hopeful that we can see them continue to do stuff like that in the future. And yeah, it sucks that there's not enough players to make a full squad of NHL guys. Hopefully that changes as we move on into the future.
Yeah, but here's the thing. Unless they dramatically expand the league, like, at what point is the league not going to be 40% Canadians?
No, it won't, because
it's still declining. Like when I got into hockey, the league was almost 80% Canadian, and now it is 40%. The amount of Americans is going up. The only reason we've seen a decline from Slovakia, Czechia, is because of the post-Soviet, the lack of spending on hockey in those countries, and that's starting to change.
But here's the thing. I don't know if we're ever going to get to a point where a country like Slovakia, just simply from a population standpoint, can field a full NHL roster. But I don't think that should be a barrier. I think we should let these countries bring players to make it a real World Cup. A World Cup shouldn't depend on having fully NHL squads.
I think that if Russia hadn't invaded the Ukraine, it would be a full World Cup. And I think it would be, like Alex said, it wouldn't be a bullshit World Cup with Team North America and Team Europe. I think it would be a full World Cup because of the growth, especially in the Swiss, German, and Slovakian programs over the past couple of years. But if you're not going to send Russia, the NHL doesn't want to piss off Russia, so they're going to do it this way. And
it's cowardice.
We're going to get what we want at the Olympics, maybe, possibly, hopefully.
The other thing I'll say is that, yeah, that might be true, but that doesn't mean that there's not going to be 21 NHL level players within a country. But once you start to get to like
I'm not sure Canada has 3 NHL level goaltenders right now.
They do.
Let me have my pithy comments.
So just because this is kind of a thing where a lot of times guys that are maybe third or fourth line guys, or equivalent guys in the AHL, the calculus for them is a bit different on coming over. A lot of them do come over but at a certain point, how much is it worth it to make similar money staying at home and being a guy or the guy for your hometown franchise? And this is something we see a lot of with like Russian guys in the KHL, or saw with Russian guys in the KHL, where players that are good, the opportunities are about, or players that are good but not great, the opportunities are about equal for them in their home countries versus here in the NHL. So you can definitely have a full team of guys who could play in the NHL, but you might not have that full team of guys in the AHL because, well, it's more valuable for those players to play at home in their home leagues. And that's fine.
Yeah.
And that's honestly probably better for the global health of the game.
Yeah, I read an article today in The Athletic that talked a lot about how well the Swiss League pays.
I mean, the
NL, it plays quite well.
The Swiss League, most notably from the North American perspective, was where Austin Matthews went to play a year instead of college hockey. because college hockey, to be frank, wouldn't have done a lot for his development, and he could get paid.
Apparently they get you a car there.
Yeah.
They just give you a car if you're an import player.
It's a very
Fully
small
furnished
class
apartment.
it's a very small class of NHL players who that makes sense for, but it's nice to have a league that can do that.
It also depends on the team as well. Certain teams have, HC Bern, Zurich Lions have a lot more capital to spend. That's one of the problems that Montreal was having this year with David Reinbacher, is that his NL rights are with one of the less funded teams, and they weren't spending the money that they wanted to on his development, and there was a lot of stagnation, which is why Montreal went out of their way to get him out of Switzerland as soon as their season ended. Like, he was on a flight to Canada 24 hours later because they were not happy with the direction it had taken. So it does depend on which club, but the big clubs in Switzerland, they're rolling in cash. They sell out a lot of games, and these are some of Europe's most affluent cities.
Yep.
These tickets are not cheap. They sell merchandise. They have great sponsors. They have tons and tons of cash. But yeah, no, I think we all agree that we would have preferred a real World Cup of hockey, like a true successor to the Canada Cup Series, where it was best on best hockey from any league. And, the NHL can control it and play by their rules and put it in their arenas, so it makes Gary Bettman happy and it doesn't play in the middle of the season. But we get what we get, and I'm excited, but it does kind of suck. It doesn't feel like it's a best on best tournament if we don't have David Pasternak and Roman Josi present,
Leon Draisaitl.
Leon Draisaitl. Yeah. All right. But it was a heck of a tournament. And again, congratulations to both Czechia and Switzerland, who Czechia hasn't won gold at home since they were Czechoslovakia. So that's something.
I'd also like to note that Czechia is the team that eliminated the U.S. in the quarterfinals in a 1-0 nail biter.
Yeah, it's like a moral victory, right?
Exactly.
Yeah, that's right. I'll take it.
Americans. All right. I want to talk about one more thing, and that's the Laura Stacey's Great Granddad Trophy. So for those of you who don't know, Laura Stacey, star forward for PWHL Montreal, wears number 7 because her great granddad is Hockey Hall of Fame legend King Clancy. And in 1988, Harold Ballard did possibly the only good thing he ever did for the game of hockey when he donated the King Clancy Memorial Trophy to the NHL. And that is an award that goes to the NHL player who best exemplifies leadership qualities on and off the ice and has made a significant humanitarian contribution to their community. This year, it will be chosen by a special panel of representatives from the Professional Hockey Writers Association, the NHL Broadcaster Association, and former King Clancy winners. I think Gary Bettman gets a vote as well. I think I read that. So he gets to vote on an award, which I don't think he's ever done before, which is, again, kind of weird. Previous winners include Patrice Bergeron for his Patrice Pals program for bringing hospital patients and families to games. Nick Foligno won with the Blue Jackets for donating $1 million to children's hospitals in Columbus and Boston. The Sedins won as a unit. Like they won together because they created several charities, but mostly raised $42 million for the Canucks for Kids Fund. And this year, every team nominates one player, but I want to focus on someone I think is close to the mission, the reason why we started Neutral Zone Hotel, and I want to talk about Scott Laughton. So Scott Laughton is the Philadelphia Flyers nomination for this, and they are nominating him specifically because of his commitment to LGBTQ plus causes. So he is the NHL ambassador for You Can Play. and for the Alphabet Sports Collective in Canada. He and James Van Riemsdyk created the Flyers Pride Initiative, which has brought, according to this is their press release, 80 individuals from the LGBTQ plus community in Philadelphia to Flyers homes games this year, as well as 50 guests to the Flyers Pride game, where they not only go see the game, they get to meet Laughton afterwards, get some merchandise. He has worked with the Ronald McDonald House Philadelphia. He's worked, with the Mazzoni Center, Philadelphia's premier LGBTQ plus health and wellness center. So yeah, this is somebody who has really walked the line. And I think he might have the inside track on winning because NHL.com gave him an editorial, which I recommend everybody read because it is, we often joke and say, players aren't necessarily the most educated and intelligent people. And this is not like a beautifully written, eloquent editorial, but it's really simple. It just gets down to the fact that he's seen firsthand the discrimination that occurs, and he wants to do something about it. We talked about Scott previously when the NHL banned Pride Tape, and Scott was one of the first players to stand up and say he was going to use the tape anyway. And he's been very open on support of Pride jerseys and very similar events. So he is, somebody who I think deserves to win. And I think that given that Gary Bettman was named Out Sports Asshole of the Year last year, might be something that they should consider. Maybe that's who Gary should cast his vote for, as a small act of contrition.
This is just something this is kind of just a point towards one of the things that I always come back to when we're talking about the NHL's lack of pride over pride, is that the NHL's actions betrayed a bunch of institutional members of the NHL, as well as LGBTQ folks everywhere, because so many of these initiatives were driven by and really endorsed by the players, the teams, and the staff of these franchises and of the league office. And I think that this nomination coming up, this nomination kind of being the one that got kind of a feature to go along with it, is just a little more evidence on that pile that stakeholders within the NHL were as unhappy and mad at that policy as stakeholders outside the NHL.
Yeah. And we saw that, the NHL is not a league that traditionally you see players making big statements. So the statements that were made at the time, I think, were pretty damning. And when you see how fast Gary backpedaled on Pride Tape.
I technically don't think Gary backpedaled on Pride Tape, because I think the policy was poorly written enough that nobody actually broke it. But that's a discussion we've already had multiple times.
Yeah. It was plausible deniability. Yeah. As John says, they can't write a memo. Lawyers who can't write a memo. No, and yeah, but still, like Gary he weaseled his way out of that one. So yeah, there's lots of really good nominees this year for the King Clancy Trophy, which is not a trophy that maybe comes with fancy awards. It's not one that I think they lean into too much for the Hockey Hall of Fame. But I think this year is a chance to honor somebody who has really, really worked his butt off for a community that the NHL has spent, especially this season, really not being kind to. And again, Out Sports Asshole of the Year, Gary Bettman gets a vote. And I hope he chose to vote for Scott Laughton.
Yeah, no, I'm just going to briefly say this since I looked it up, and unfortunately Laughton did not win. Anders Lee of the Islanders won.
Oh, I thought it was I thought it was not announced yet. When did they announce it?
Tuesday.
Tuesday.
So earlier today.
Today.
7:36 p.m.
So
Wow,
they
so like literally an hour and a half
announced
ago.
it. They literally announced it like
When you added
6 minutes after I put all the stuff in our document.
Yes.
Oh no.
Well, Scott Laughton, you are the King Clancy Memorial Cup pretend winner for the Neutral Zone Hotel. We will put a plaque up for you in one of our wings because keep doing what you're doing. It's pretty cool.
Thanks for looking it up, Alex.
Ah, wow. Yeah, no,
What amazing timing.
I like literally, I think I posted in our Discord that I was doing it at like 7:30. So Gary is in our Discord. He knows what we're doing. He called up the awards committee and had them rig it so that we would get scooped. It's the only explanation that I'll accept. Had my passionate speech and everything.
Yep.
Congratulations, Anders Lee. All right, folks. Well, you know what? Let's wrap this up. So thank you so much for being here with me today and joining me and my friends with this conversation that definitely didn't feel awkward at the end because of the NHL announcing an award just before we started recording. But you have been listening to the Neutral Zone Hotel, which is written, hosted, and produced by the lovely Neutral Zone Hotel crew. You can check out our website, neutralzonehotel.com. As always, we want to thank our friend Emily Mowbray for designing the fantastic logo that adorns all podcast players. Wherever you can find your podcasts, we'd appreciate a thumbs up, 5 stars if you had a great time listening. You can check us out on Instagram, Bluesky, or YouTube at Neutral Zone Hotel. And we're available on Discord, neutralzonehotel.com/Discord. We would love a chance to hang out with you, chat with you, hear feedback. You can yell at me and tell me what a terrible job I'm doing. You can yell at SJ and tell them what a great job they're doing. You can argue about Legos. We'd love to have you along. So,
And if you're Trevor, you can argue about Legos in the wrong channel.
Damn it.
Trevor's real good at arguing about Legos in the wrong channel. All right, folks. Have a great night. Bye-bye.